Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Sarah from Who I Am Among the Pages, and if you're new here, thanks for stopping by, and if you're not, thanks for sticking around. So today is December 29th. We are almost at the end of this godforsaken year, and you know, as rough of a year as it has been, I've done pretty good reading wise, honestly. So I thought I would take the opportunity to share with you the books that I did read this year. I do not have all of them. Some of them were ebooks, some of them were library books. There's one or two that I do have physical copies of, but I just don't have them here. They're at school on my bookcase, so I do apologize for the titles I do not have to show you directly. But rest assured, I did have a copy at some point, one way or another. In addition to that, I will be sharing a very brief overview and my Goodreads rating for each book. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this because I did end up reading 28 books this year, which is pretty little for BookTube, but it was definitely one of my bigger years. So getting into this, I started out the year with The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, of course, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It follows a lonely millionaire who's quite eccentric, known for throwing parties, and really follows how people can use you and how money really doesn't mean anything. Then, followed it up with Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This follows the fictional first son of the first female president of the United States and the royal prince of England, and they start out enemies, and we see them come together solving foreign problems and coming together personally in a very sweet romantic way. And I did give this a 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Next up was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which was quite a buzzed book this year and last year. I gave that a 3 out of 5 stars, and it follows a very troubled main character who is accepted into Harvard and learns of the secret societies and paranormal goings on behind the scenes. It was not Harvard, it was Yale. I am sorry. Next up was The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. I do not have a copy of that book. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. No, sorry. 3 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it, but wasn't perfect. And it follows a protagonist who has become partially victim of the vampire epidemic that is going on, and her adventures into basically the quarantined cold town where the vampires are sent after they turn. And I read it right before the pandemic, and man, is that creepy foreshadowing. So next I read Ceremony by Leslie Marmon Silko. I did read this for school, and it is fictional. That is why I'm giving it a rating. And I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. It follows a troubled Native American veteran living on a reserve, and we see how he comes back from the war, how he is affected by his PTSD, and how he uses his culture to cope with that and find deeper truths. It's very meaningful. It is very valuable, but I personally did not enjoy it because there's a lot of literary things that there's a lot I didn't know about it until my professor pointed it out to me, and I feel like you have to know a lot about the author to understand the book. That's why I just want to preface that. That's why I didn't like it. Next up was probably the worst book I have ever read, and that is Surfacing by Margaret Atwood. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. I read it for school, and I really can't even tell you what it was about because I hated it that much, and I swear I'm just blocking it out of my mind. So, yeah, be getting rid of that one. Next up was Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs, writing as Linda Brent. This is nonfiction. I did read this for school, and it's following the incidents in the life of a slave girl. It is brutal. It is a very hard read, but it's so valuable, and it's hard to believe that this is nonfiction. The horror that is in this novel, in this book, is just astounding. But the power of the main character, you know, of the protagonist that we're following, is just unbelievable. It's amazing. After that, I read The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. I gave that a 4 out of 5 stars. I did not rate Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl because I don't feel like that's something that I should be judging. But Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, I did give a 4 out of 5 stars. Ooh, a little better. And that is by Mackenzie Lee, and it follows a main character who comes from a upper class family in Europe, and his tour across Europe and what goes wrong from there. I'll be honest, I don't remember a whole lot of it. It was okay, but it wasn't my favorite book, and the more I look back, it wasn't very memorable. So the next book I did not give a rating to, and that is Lost Mountain, A Year in the Vanishing Wilderness by Eric Reese, and I did also read this one for school. This is just really moving and really horrific at times. It's following a year in the life of this mountain that is literally is mined by mountaintop removal, which is where they just take the mountain down. And of course, I'm from Appalachia, and it really horrifies me to know that the forests that I grew up with, that's what's happening. And it's a very moving, very powerful read if you're interested in environmental issues. So I read it for school, but I would have read that on my own time. I'm not a nonfiction person, but that was so valuable. The next book I read this year was House of Earth and Blood, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. That is, of course, by the lovely Sarah J. Maas. I don't even know where to start with this book. It is an urban fantasy, I believe. And it follows a main character who has recently suffered a huge catastrophic loss in her life, her recovery from a very heavy-duty party girl lifestyle, and she ends up caught up in the investigation on basically an illicit substance or what's going on in her city. And it is, of course, a fictional city. It is very interesting. It's very hard to explain. I would think at this point everybody has has heard of it enough that I don't have to explain it. So the next book I read this year, I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I have to find a comfortable way to sit. I'm like crammed between my bookcase and my bed. And that is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. Anyway, that was really, really good. It follows a super shy main character who actually runs a super, super successful webcomic, but nobody knows it's her. She deals with definitely depression and anxiety, and we see her trying to be a teenager and what happens when worlds collide, basically. Because I think as a teenager, a lot of us have had two personalities. We've had an online presence, and then we've had who we really are in person. And this was that amplified to pretty extreme. Most of us aren't celebrities online. The next book I read, I don't have with me, but it was The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. It is the second book in the Raven Cycle series, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I don't think I can really explain that a whole lot, because if you haven't read the first book, I'm afraid I'd spoil it. But it wasn't bad. It has some really cool, like, fight scenes, I guess is the best way to put it. There's a lot of, like, drag racing and muscle cars, and it's really cool. After that, I read City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, and I don't have that. That is an ebook. My heartburn. Ugh. I did give that 5 out of 5 stars, and of course it is the first book in the Mortal Instruments series in the world. It kicked off the Shadowhunter, Lollapalooza that we have now. I love it. I read it when I was in middle school for the first time, and it definitely held up. It was as good as I remember it being, and thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed going back to the world and experiencing the magic through the runes and the Shadowhunter world in general. After that, I read American Royals by Catherine McGee, and I do have a signed first edition, so but this is a very, very interesting YA alternate history where George Washington was offered the crown just like he was in real life, but he accepted. So this is following in the modern day his, great grandchildren, and it follows several different perspectives of not only the royal kids, but also friends and people involved with them, It's full of like political intrigue and romance, forbidden romance, and it's so good. I loved it. After that, I did read Fangirl, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. This follows a girl named Kath, and much like Eliza and Eliza and Her Monsters, she is a very famous fanfiction writer on the internet. She's starting her freshman year of college with her twin sister, and they begin to drift apart. Her fan fiction is growing in popularity, but at the same time, in her English classes, because she did major in English, her professors are struggling to accept her form of writing as a true art, if you will. And believe me, as somebody who has written fan fiction and still really does it, every bit as much work goes into fan fiction as goes into completely original fiction. It's just a different kind of work in some ways. After that, I followed it up with Chain Reaction by Simone Alcalis. This is the 3rd book in the Perfect Chemistry trilogy, and we are following the youngest of the Fuentes brothers and his girlfriend. So we're seeing the later in life of his older brothers. I can't remember their name for the life of me. I think one was Mario, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's very interesting because, of course, the brothers have been involved with the Latino Blood, the local gang, and we see their struggle to escape that. Seems like it should be destiny, but they want to go to college. They want to really make something of themselves. So it's a very good book, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the whole trilogy. I read the first 2 books when I was like 16 or 17. So after that, I read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and I gave that 4 out of 5 stars, and I gave 3 out of 5 stars to Chain Reaction. I keep forgetting to say that. So I didn't enjoy this book as much as I thought it would, but I do want to follow it up, finish the series. It follows Jude, whose parents are murdered. She goes to live in the world of the fairies, the treacherous high court of fairy. And she has come of age in this novel, and we see her struggle to find her place as an adult human in the world of fairy. After that, I picked up something much different, and that was Post-Mortem by Patricia Cornwell. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and this is the first book in a very long series, also by Patricia Cornwell, of course. It follows Kay Scarpetta, who is the head medical examiner for Virginia. So it takes place in Richmond, which is not, I mean, it's a good distance from me, but it's in the same state. And yeah, it follows a really interesting string of them trying to figure out who the murderer is behind a string of seemingly unrelated murders of women. The only thing that's common is like time of day and the fact that they're women. But other than that, nothing seems to really be consistent. Unfortunately, after that, I did read Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, and I'd given Postmortem 4 out of 5 stars. I gave Carry On 2 out of 5 stars. It was one of my lowest rated reads for the year, just because I had a super hard time getting into this. I had a super hard time staying in this. It felt like a really cheap Harry Potter knockoff, and I did not appreciate it. I just didn't enjoy it. So, next up with, I did not write it down, but I am pretty sure. Oh, next up was The Sun Trail by Erin Hunter. It was one of the Warriors books. I gave that 5 out of 5 stars, and that is the first book in a part of the series that basically explains the dawn of the clans. And so if you've read the Warriors books before, you hear them talk about like where the clans were before, how they were formed, and like these ancestors that are mentioned in the series, like we read as kids. It's following these ancestors. It's really, really neat. After that, I did read Fear Street. The Fear Street super thriller, bind up of party games and Don't Stay Up Late. I gave that 3 out of 5 stars because it was classic, cheesy R.L. Stine. In party games, we see a group of teenagers go to this island, and then there's like this killer that shows them and keeps killing them, but then it turns out things aren't what they seemed. And Don't Stay Up Late, this girl is babysitting a kid, and the kid's like doing freaky shit. I don't want to explain too much, but crap's happening, and she knows somehow it's the kid, but she doesn't know how it's the kid. Wonderful, cheesy R.L. Stine. Would definitely recommend, but it is no literary masterpiece. Mark my words. Just enjoyable. Next up was probably my second least favorite read of the year, right behind Servicing by Margaret Atwood. That is Insomnia by Stephen King. I'm not even going to go into how much I hate this, and I don't even know how to explain like what it's about. It's just a shit show, and I don't recommend it. So, I just knocked over other stuff. Okay. That book is just determined to just kill me. So after that, I did give that a 1 out of 5 stars. 4 out of 5 stars came in Girl in Blue by Anne Rinaldi. This is following, I can't remember her name, Sarah Louisa, who is a teenager in 1861. She is fleeing a forced marriage to this really creepy, really old neighbor. She goes and joins the Union Army, dressed as a boy, and although she is discovered, we see how she copes with her new job that the Union gives her. So, really good. Okay, after that, I know I have this here, but I can't find it for the life of me. I don't know where I put it. It's probably going to be like on the camera somewhere. But it was The World of Wakanda graphic novel by Roxane Gay, and I gave that 2 out of 5 stars. Sorry about that. I got the full storage, and now I'm getting another low battery. Holy cow, I just want to get through this video. So, cleared out my storage, we are good to go. But anyway, then I read World of Wakanda, the graphic novel by Roxane Gay, and I only gave it 2 out of 5 stars because it really, I don't think the plot was very well written. The illustrations are gorgeous, but I felt like the plot was kind of clunky, and probably would have been better explored in a full novel rather than a graphic novel. Although, of course, you know, it's based on a superhero. It's basically the background behind a superhero, so yeah, it is graphic novel. And I just bumped the camera. Holy cow, why can't anything go right? Next, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and I gave that 5 out of 5 stars. I've talked about this book before. It's one of my all-time favorite books. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling following Farah, who is the youngest daughter of 3 girls in a family that has fallen on very hard times, where they used to be very, very wealthy, and she goes out in the woods one night and kills a wolf. The wolf is not what it seemed, and she is transported to the land of the Fae, where things are also not what they seem, and everybody is kind of screwed. And she finds a way to save the day. It's great. Then I read Dumplin' by Julie Murphy. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars because it was good but kind of problematic. It does have some mention of death, as well as plenty of mentions of insecurity and body shaming in a way. So if you're sensitive to that, I would not recommend. But it follows Willadine Dixon, who is a self-proclaimed fat girl, and she has grown up in the world of pageants. Her mother was the winner of the Texas Blue Bonnet, I can't remember what it's called, the Blue Bonnet pageant, Miss Teen Blue Bonnet Beauty pageant, there you go. And her mom now runs it, and so she's grown up very much not the pageant girl, but decides to show just how confident she is in herself and show how you don't have to be the typical pageant girl to do it. She enters the pageant herself. It is really entertaining, and I actually liked the main character, even though I know she was not always very good. Second to last, I read Bonecryer's Moon by Catherine Purdy. I gave that a 4 out of 5 stars because it was very entertaining, very unique magic system, and you're following a group of women known as the Bonecryers, and the story is written from the perspective of 3 different characters, and these women derive their magic from the bones of animals, and they are the farriers of the dead. They also have a rite of passage before they are able to ferry the dead, and this book explores what happens when that goes wrong for one of our characters. Our last book this year, I have not finished yet, so I do not have a rating, because I don't think it's right to rate a book I haven't quite finished, but I will definitely get through it today, and that is The Secret of Sarah Revere by Anne Rinaldi, and this follows Sarah Revere, Paul Revere's daughter, and it allows us a glimpse into Boston right before and during the early, on the eve of and during the early American Revolution. It is extremely entertaining. It's meant for 10 to 14-year-olds. It is middle grade. It's a very quick read, very easy read, and just really, I don't want to say moving, but it's sweet to read from a perspective of somebody so young sometimes. So yeah, those are all the books I have read in 2020, and in case I forgot to mention any ratings that I gave on Goodreads, I'll go through them real quick. The Great Gatsby, I gave 5 out of 5 stars. Red, White, and Royal Blue was 5 out of 5. Ninth House, 3 out of 5. Ceremony, 2 out of 5. Coldest Girl in Coal Town, 3 out of 5. Surfacing, 1 out of 5. Incidents, I did not give a rating to. Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue was 4 out of 5. Lost Mountain, I did not give a rating to. House of Earth and Blood was 4 out of 5. Eliza and Her Monsters was 5 out of 5. The Dream Thieves was 4 out of 5. City of Bones, 5 out of 5. American Royals, 5 out of 5. Fangirl was 5 out of 5. I had a couple really good books there. Chain Reaction was 3 out of 5. Cruel Prince was 4 out of 5. Postmortem was 4. Carry On was 2. Picking Back Up with the Sun Trail was 5 out of 5 stars. Fear Street was 3 out of 5. And unfortunately, Freaking Insomnia was 1 out of 5. Girl in Blue was 4 out of 5. World of Wakanda was 2 out of 5. A Court of Thorns and Roses was 5. Dumpling 3. Bonecryer's Moon 4. And The Secret of Sarah Revere, I do not have a rating for yet. And in case you were wondering why I was looking down, I was looking at my beautiful, wonderful, perfect, shiny journal where I had all of my notes written in. And excuse my handwriting because, God, it is atrocious. And in case you're wondering, this is where I do all of my notes for my videos. So yeah, that wraps up everything I read this year. It has been a rough year for everybody. And yeah, if you're watching this, I hope you're doing okay. You know, I think everybody could be doing better. But I hope whatever's going on, whether, hopefully you're not sick with COVID, but if you're sick, if you're not sick, if you know somebody who is, I hope you and them, everyone around you is doing just fine. And I really hope that 2021 is a better year for everyone because, man, do we all deserve it. So yeah, my Goodreads will be linked down below in case you do want to check these books out on my Goodreads. If you want to keep up with what I'm reading in general. My Wattpad is also linked down below in case you want to see how I write, what I write. It hasn't been updated in a while, but I am establishing a very reasonable schedule to get back to uploading, writing on Wattpad, so hopefully I can keep up with it this year because with everything kind of got thrown to the side. And I think a lot of people kind of did the same thing. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too much. And I have never filmed a wrap-up that long, so that is why this is all new. But yeah, so I will not be doing another video like this until this time next year. And it is hard to believe I will be 21 by then. Almost 22. How time flies. I was barely 19 when I started this channel. It's crazy, isn't it? Alright, kept you guys for long enough. See you next time.